I am Stacy, and the night my world shifted began under glittering chandeliers. The Lambert family called it a meeting of unity. But for me, it was nothing more than an ambush. The dining table stretched like a runway, polished to perfection, lined with crystal glasses and silver forks. The air smelled of roasted lamb and arrogance. I wasn't a guest. I was the target. At the head sat Vivian, my mother-in-law, dressed in pearls, her smile sharp and deliberate. Beside her sat Jason, my husband of 5 years, staring into his plate, silent as stone. That silence was betrayal. The first jab came from Aunt Margaret. "Still at that little marketing job, Stacy? Must be difficult to keep up with our lifestyle." Chuckles floated across the table. I straightened. "I lead national campaigns." But before I could finish, Vivian cut me off. "Of course you work," she said smoothly. "Unlike us, Stacy doesn't enjoy financial stability." The laughter grew, crueler. My achievements dissolved in their mouths. Uncle Richard added, "Climbing from the bottom is admirable, but wealth runs in the blood." Another cousin smirked. "Some of us are simply born to it." Their eyes grazed my dress, calculating its price like it was a joke. Then Vivian delivered the sharpest cut. She leaned in, eyes gleaming. "Let's be honest. Stacy is poor. She always will be. Jason deserves someone who belongs." The room erupted in muffled laughter. Phones slipped out to capture my reaction. Jason sat frozen, not one word spoken. His silence screamed louder than their insults. If you've ever sat among people who smiled as they carved you apart, you know the sting. Drop a comment if you've lived it, because humiliation that sharp never fades easily. But I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I lifted my glass of water, sipped calmly, and smiled. A real smile. Not the mask they expected. My heart pounded, not from shame, but from anticipation. Because what they didn't realize was that this wasn't their stage. It was mine. Every cruel laugh was fuel, every insult a countdown. They thought they had cornered me. They had no idea they were sharpening the very blade I'd use against them. The chandelier sparkled above, casting golden light across their smug faces. I stared at them, memorizing each expression. These people, bound by wealth but empty of compassion, believed they had power over me. They believed my silence meant defeat. Jason shifted slightly, as though the weight of his cowardice pressed him down. His eyes never met mine. He wasn't my partner tonight. He was her son. My pulse steadied. I reminded myself of where I came from, the battles I had already fought, the storms I had already endured. This humiliation was just another trial, and trials never broke me. They built me. I pressed my napkin into my lap, folded perfectly, my smile unbroken. Their laughter continued, fading into background noise. I heard something deeper, my own voice, calm and certain. "Wait, watch, rise." That night, as Vivian mocked me and Jason chose silence, I made a decision. I would not defend myself with words. Words meant nothing here. I would let my actions speak, louder than their insults, stronger than their inheritance. And when the time came, when the very sky itself split open above this gilded prison, they would finally see who I truly was. For now, I remained still, calm, silent, letting them believe they had won. Outside, beyond the estate windows, my secret already waited in the dark, ready to rise. While their laughter still echoed in that glittering hall, my mind drifted away, not to their insults, but to the road that had carried me here. Because I wasn't born into chandeliers and manicured estates. I came from something far stronger, resilience. I grew up in suburban Minnesota in a small 2-story house that smelled of books and coffee. My father taught high school math, chalk dust clinging to his sweaters. My mother managed a bookstore on Main Street, her hands always ink-stained from unpacking new arrivals. We didn't have luxury, but we had stability. We didn't travel to Paris or Rome, but we shared picnics by the lake. There was no silver spoon, but there was always love. My parents raised me to believe that wealth is measured not in money, but in integrity. Many of my classmates went to college on their parents' credit cards. I didn't have that option. I worked 2 part-time jobs while keeping a scholarship. On weekends, I tutored calculus. Weeknights, I waited tables until my legs ached. I studied until dawn, fueled by coffee and stubbornness. Slowly, I learned independence was its own kind of luxury. Graduating with a degree in marketing was more than a ceremony. It was proof that sacrifice leads somewhere. That diploma wasn't just paper. It was a scar I wore proudly. I landed an entry-level position at a respected Chicago firm. At first, I was invisible, fetching coffee, filing data sheets, living under fluorescent lights. But I refused to stay unseen. Every project I touched bore my fingerprint. My ideas stood out. My drive spoke louder than my quiet voice. Within 3 years, I earned 2 promotions. I led national campaigns that redefined brands. Colleagues respected me, not for my background, but for my results. Professionally, I thrived. Personally, I was restless. Relationships fizzled quickly. Men admired my ambition until they resented it. I began to wonder if I'd have to choose between love and independence. Then came Jason. We met at my college roommate Olivia's wedding. He was the groom's cousin, serving as best man. His smile was confident, but not arrogant, his brown eyes warm. During the reception, he approached me at the bar, glass in hand. "A beautiful woman with ambition," he said, raising his drink. "That's rare." The words lingered, wrapping around my insecurities like silk. I let myself believe him. Jason came from old money, the Lambert name stretching back generations. His family empire, Lambert Industries, loomed like a monument. Jason himself was vice president of business development, polished, worldly, seemingly unspoiled by privilege. He didn't flaunt it. Not then. Our romance moved quickly. Weekend getaways to wine country, flowers arriving at my office, conversations stretching into early mornings. It felt like destiny. 6 months later, he proposed during a private dinner cruise on Lake Michigan. I said yes without hesitation, believing I had found a man who valued me for who I was. But love blinded me. The first time I met Vivian, she assessed me with eyes cold as winter. "So, advertising?" she asked, voice dripping with disdain. "Marketing," I corrected gently. "Senior brand manager." Her smile was tight. How quaint. Jason deserves a wife focused on home. Careers can be distracting. Jason squeezed my hand under the table but stayed silent. I told myself it was nerves, that she'd soften with time. I ignored the knot forming in my stomach. Back then, I thought patience and love would protect me. I believed acceptance was just effort away. But as I sat years later, mocked openly at their dinner table, I understood. Vivian would never see me as family. Jason would never shield me. To them, I would always be an outsider, and that was their fatal mistake. Because while they laughed, they didn't realize every struggle had forged me into something unstoppable. They saw weakness, but sitting in their midst was a storm. Marrying Jason initially felt like living inside a fairy tale. The wedding glittered with extravagance, the sort of affair magazines would feature in glossy spreads. Yet beneath the glamour, every decision bore Vivian's touch. My preferences were brushed aside with dismissive words, quaint, unsuitable for a Lambert bride. I wished to weave in parts of my Polish heritage, but she waved them away as unnecessary. Even the sleek modern gown I adored was almost replaced by the ball gown Vivian insisted was more fitting. I told myself it didn't matter. Love was what mattered most. We moved into a stunning brownstone in Lincoln Park, and for a moment I believed it belonged to us alone, a sanctuary where Jason and I could grow together. But I was wrong. Jason traveled frequently for business, leaving long absences. During those times, Vivian appeared more and more. With the key Jason had given her for emergencies, she entered freely. Her emergencies consisted of rearranging furniture, reorganizing closets, and criticizing everything I touched. Often, I'd return home to find her inspecting the refrigerator. Jason grew up with certain standards. She'd say casually, "You really should try harder." I convinced myself she could be won over, so I tried harder. I practiced complicated recipes, striving for perfection. I joined her charity committee to demonstrate value. I even enrolled in etiquette courses, determined to remove any flaws she might highlight. Yet no matter what I did, it was never enough. The worst part wasn't Vivian's constant criticism. It was Jason's silence. Every time I begged for boundaries, he exhaled, "You're overreacting." His refusal to speak was a knife. Silence when she mocked me. Silence when she rearranged my efforts. Silence when she humiliated me. One night, after preparing an elaborate dinner for Jason's colleagues, I thought perhaps I had succeeded. But Vivian sampled the beef Wellington and smirked. Nicole would have perfected this. She studied in Paris. Nicole, Jason's ex, the one Vivian adored. My face burned. Later, Jason muttered, "You're too sensitive." Mother meant well. If you've ever had a partner remain mute while others diminished you, you know the isolation. Drop a comment if you've endured it. Silence within a marriage wounds deeper than words ever could. Still, I clung to hope. I believed time would ease tensions. I dreamed children might soften Vivian, turning her into a grandmother, forcing Jason to defend us. I spun fantasies in my head because admitting reality felt unbearable. But the cracks widened. I decorated the guest room with love, only to discover Vivian had redesigned it in my absence. I planned family traditions, only to be excluded from Lambert gatherings. Once I overheard her whispering to a relative, "She isn't what we hoped for. Jason will come to his senses eventually." Jason never defended me. At night, I stared at the ceiling, while Jason slept soundly in the guest room, claiming he needed space from my negativity. I wondered how long I could endure being unseen in my own marriage. Looking back, I realized love had blinded me. I clung to the man Jason might become, not the man he was. I thought his silence meant compromise, when in truth, it was complicity. By our third year, the truth had settled inside me like a heavy shadow. Jason wasn't my partner. He wasn't my protector. He was still his mother's son, and betrayal wasn't looming on the horizon. It was already happening around me. Jason's silence wasn't weakness. It was cover. For months, I told myself his stillness came from conflict, that he was torn between loyalty to me and obedience to his mother. But truth reveals itself in shadows, and soon those shadows spoke louder than his excuses. The signs were there. His phone, once casually left on the counter, was now locked and flipped face down. Business trips stretched longer than scheduled. Family weekends at the lake house didn't include me, always explained away as just business. I ignored the unease until one night when fate refused to let me look away. Jason stepped into the shower, leaving his phone charging on the kitchen counter. A message flashed across the screen. Nicole B. Can't wait for our weekend, love. Counting the hours. Nicole. The woman Vivian praised endlessly, the one she claimed had been perfect for Jason. My stomach turned cold. My hands shook as I read more. Dozens of messages. Intimate, unapologetic. Promises of a future once things at home were handled. Every word was a blade. When I confronted him, I expected guilt. Instead, I found rage. "You invaded my privacy," he shouted. His eyes burned with fury, not shame. "This is exactly the unstable behavior Mother warned me about." Unstable. That word struck deeper than any insult Vivian had thrown. By morning, Jason was gone. He packed a bag and moved back into his parents' mansion. Silence filled our brownstone, echoing louder than arguments ever could. For weeks, I felt hollow. Food lost its taste. Sleep slipped from me. Friends called, but I withdrew, ashamed and confused, as though I were the one who had failed. Then came the money. I logged into our joint account, planning to send a gift for my sister's newborn. The balance read 0. Our savings, too, were drained. Investments I had contributed to now bore only Jason's name. My independence had been siphoned into nothingness. Panic clawed at me. I called Jason. "Where's our money?" I demanded. His voice was cold, rehearsed. "I moved the assets temporarily. Mother thought it was prudent given your emotional state." "You emptied everything without telling me. That's financial abuse." "Don't be dramatic," he replied. "The money is safe. It belongs to the family, to us." But his us wasn't Jason and me. It was Jason and Vivian. If you've ever had your independence stripped, you know money isn't just numbers. It's freedom. And they had locked me in a cage. Vivian added salt to wounds. At Dallas, she whispered to others that I was unstable, fragile, unfit for the Lambert name. Friends who once laughed with me now looked away. Invitations dried up. My world shrank until I stood alone, painted as a liability. They weren't only betraying me, they were erasing me. But erasure doesn't leave emptiness. It leaves fire. I contacted Patricia Goldman, one of Chicago's top divorce attorneys. Sitting across from her, I told everything. Jason's affair, the drained accounts, Vivian's campaign against me. Patricia listened, her jaw tightening with each detail. "What you've described is calculated," she said finally. "This isn't just cruelty, it's strategy. But strategy can be countered. If you're ready to fight, we'll make sure they regret underestimating you." For the first time in months, my heart steadied. Jason and Vivian thought they had broken me. What they had done, instead, was ignite me. The storm they mocked was finally taking shape. And soon, it would break over their perfect empire. Walking out of Patricia Goldman's office, the icy Chicago wind slapped across my face, but inside me burned a fire I hadn't felt in months. Her words echoed like a battle cry. "If you're ready to fight, we'll make sure they regret underestimating you." I was ready. The first step was preparation. Night after night, I sat in my office, gathering every piece of evidence I could find. Bank records that proved Jason drained our accounts, screenshots of texts from Nicole, emails filled with Vivian's condescension, even recordings of her casually belittling me at gatherings. For years, I brushed these moments aside as family tension. Now they became weapons. Patricia advised me to stay calm. "Silence will make them careless," she said. "Let them believe you're broken." I nodded, but inside I planned for something more. Court would punish them legally, but I wanted something public. I wanted them humiliated in the same way they had humiliated me. Then, as if fate itself conspired with me, the invitation arrived. A cream-colored envelope, Vivian's perfect script etched across it. "Family meeting, Friday, attendance expected." Expected. As though I were still theirs to command. I smiled. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. If you've ever dreamed of walking into a room of people who underestimated you and proving them wrong, you'll understand the thrill that pulsed through me. Comment below if you've ever wanted your enemies to see you rise. I began planning not just an appearance but a spectacle. I chartered a helicopter, quietly, discreetly, arranging for it to arrive at the Lambert estate at precisely the right moment. I organized my evidence into neat files, ready to reveal. My background in marketing had taught me timing and presentation matter more than anything. And this would be my greatest campaign. Friday arrived. I dressed carefully, choosing a sleek black dress, not flashy, not glittering, commanding. Confidence doesn't scream. It whispers, steady and sure. As I looked into the mirror before leaving, I whispered to myself, "You are not their victim anymore." The Lambert estate glowed as I approached, all glass and gold. Inside, the family gathered around the mahogany table. Crystal chandeliers reflected smug faces. Vivian sat at the head, Jason at her side, both of them certain of their control. Conversations dulled when I entered. Their whispers brushed against my skin like knives. I smiled faintly, taking my seat without hesitation. Vivian's voice carried smoothly. "Stacy, how good of you to join us. We were just discussing family assets." Her eyes gleamed with amusement, the same cruelty that had haunted me for years. Family assets, the very money they stole from me. Half an hour passed, filled with veiled insults and dismissive comments. I remained calm, sipping my drink, waiting. Then it came. The low vibration, subtle at first, rattling the floor beneath our feet. A sound no one could ignore, the thrum of rotor blades, heads turned toward the window. Jason frowned, confused. The sound grew louder, shaking glasses on the table. Whispers rose, nervous and uncertain. Then, through the glass, beams of light cut across the estate lawn as the helicopter descended gracefully. The room froze. Vivian's smile faltered, cracks forming in her mask. Jason's phone slipped from his hand, clattering against polished wood. Relatives craned their necks, confusion painted across their faces. I leaned back in my chair, heart steady. The timing was perfect. I let the silence stretch, savoring their disbelief. Then I smiled and spoke softly, my words slicing sharper than any blade. "They called me poor," I said, my voice calm, deliberate. "But tonight, you'll learn just how wrong you were." The helicopter's roar shook the Lambert estate, rattling glasses and silencing whispers. Curtains swayed in the draft as floodlights from the lawn cut through the night. Everyone at the table sat frozen, mouths half open, eyes wide. The sound wasn't just loud, it was undeniable, the kind of sound that demanded attention. The pilot stepped out first, crisp uniform gleaming beneath the beams, before opening the cabin door with military precision. His voice carried clearly into the dining hall. "Mrs. Lambert, your helicopter is ready." Gasps erupted. Chairs scraped. Relatives leaned forward, craning their necks toward the windows. Vivian's flawless composure cracked, her pearl necklace trembling against her chest. Jason's jaw dropped, the smug calm he always wore vanishing in an instant. For years they had called me poor. For years they had underestimated me. Now their disbelief was its own reward. I rose slowly from my chair, letting the click of my heels echo against the marble floor. I didn't rush. Every step was deliberate, calculated. I wanted them to feel the weight of each second. "Poverty," I began softly, my voice carrying easily in the silence, "isn't about money. Poverty is about spirit. And if you thought I was poor, it's because you never understood me." Vivian recovered just enough to spit venom. "This is nothing but a stunt," she snapped. "Appearances don't change the truth." I turned fully toward her, meeting her eyes without flinching. No, Vivian. A stunt is presenting divorce papers as a birthday gift. A stunt is draining my accounts behind my back. A stunt is spreading lies about me being unstable. What you see outside isn't performance. It's the life I built while you laughed at me. The room fell deathly quiet. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a slim folder, setting it on the table with a soft thud. Inside are financial records documenting every transfer Jason made without my consent. Screenshots of his affair with Nicole. Witness statements about your little luncheons, Vivian, where you poisoned my reputation. This isn't rumor, it's proof. Fraud, infidelity, defamation, all tied neatly to your names. Jason's face went pale. Stacy, wait, we can talk about this. I cut him off with a raised hand. You had your chance to talk. You had years. But every time you chose silence. And tonight, your silence is finished. If you've ever dreamed of justice after humiliation, type the word justice in the comments. Because in this moment, I tasted it. Sweet and sharp. Vivian's lips trembled. For the first time since I had met her, her mask of control was gone. The relatives whispered frantically among themselves, looking between the three of us as though the empire they worshipped was crumbling right before their eyes. I lifted my phone from the table. The press release is already scheduled, I said calmly. By sunrise, every major paper in Chicago will know the truth. Your empire won't be tarnished quietly. It will be exposed. Jason reached across the table, desperate. Stacy, don't do this. We can fix... You can't fix betrayal, I interrupted. My voice didn't waver. You can't fix years of silence. And you can't fix the mistake of underestimating me. I turned toward the door, my heels striking the marble like punctuation. At the threshold, I paused. Enjoy your meeting, I said, glancing back once. I have a flight to catch. The roar of the helicopter grew as I stepped outside into the cold night air. The pilot saluted, guiding me toward the cabin. My dress fluttered in the downdraft, hair whipping across my face, but I felt lighter than I had in years. Free. Climbing aboard, I settled into the seat as the blades accelerated. Through the window, I caught one last glimpse of the family who had called me poor. Their pale, stunned faces blurred as we lifted higher, shrinking into nothing. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't staying to argue. Sometimes the best revenge is rising so high they can never reach you again. And that, my friends, is how the story ends. A woman once mocked, silenced, and underestimated rose higher than anyone imagined. What began as humiliation at a dinner table became the spark that lit her revenge. And in the end, she didn't just fight back with words. She fought back with dignity, strength, and proof that real power comes from within. If you've ever been laughed at, dismissed, or told you weren't enough, remember Stacy's story. Remember how she sat in silence, storing every insult like fuel, and then chose the perfect moment to rise. Revenge doesn't always have to be about destruction. Sometimes it's about proving your worth so loudly that the world has no choice but to listen. Think about your own life. Have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever been treated as if you were less, only to know deep down you were so much more? If you have, you're not alone. Drop a comment below and share your story. Because here, your voice matters. This is what Revenge Inside is all about. Real stories. Powerful lessons, and the reminder that even in the darkest moments, strength can rise. If this story hit you, if you felt the sting of injustice or the thrill of her victory, make sure to hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Inside. Every week, we bring you new tales of betrayal, payback, and triumph. Stories that remind us all that sometimes the sweetest victory is simply proving the world wrong. Until next time, stay strong, stay sharp, and remember, the best revenge always comes from the inside.